like I said, we all really appreciate you making the time. I know it's, I'm sure Supervisor Storck's workload has certainly changed in many ways with the pandemic as well as all of you. So, and there are a lot of needs in our community, especially the Mount Vernon area or, along Richmond Highway especially. So I'd love to dig into some of those areas of how the pandemic has kind of made your work change in many ways. But first, I'll just introduce, what our topic is. Every LFI cohort gets a topic, which we are the last group to go in this year-long program. So we have our task is to put together a half-day program where we'll bring key experts in our topic field to really, get our fellow peers in LFI to really think about the issues of the day and how we can be, better empowered as leaders in our workspaces and in our communities. So we have the broad topic of establishing a livable community that is equitable and inclusive. So we have the benefit of going last. One group just presented on workforce and, the telework place that we're all living in and how that, what that looks like across the county. I think the next group, they're focused on education. And I forget the third. Is it health? Do you all know? Health? Yeah, health is the third. So we know that all of those elements that are already going to be presented obviously tie very much into community, livable communities. So, we will probably not touch on their specific topics as in depth, but we know that those are all important features. A couple of areas we've been kind of tossing around in these last 2 weeks since we've gotten our topic have been around transportation, the arts, and I think, what was the third one? I'm really...
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing, yes. Affordable housing, yeah. So those are kind of three areas we're thinking about. So I think we'd love to definitely talk about those areas. But I guess just jumping in, I would love to hear, just in your own words, a little bit about the Mount Vernon Magisterial District. Obviously, there's diversity even within the district, we know. And I'd love to know, these are some of the questions we shared, but, what make this community unique? Obviously there are unique strengths and opportunities, but also challenges and ways in which you all have to think about your work to reach all of the community members and leaders and businesses in different ways. So I'd love to just kind of get a sense from that perspective of, what those challenges and strengths look like.
Before we frame that, I know that Rebecca, you work down the street, but I am curious where the rest of you live. Just
Sure.
Helps give us perspective if you're familiar with Richmond Highway and Mount Vernon.
So I actually live in Arlington, so I'm not a Fairfax County resident, but I work at the Panino building. So, and a lot of times what I notice, we deliver a lot of materials to early childhood educators. So I've had the opportunity to drive in many areas within that Mount Vernon area. So just from that little piece of my world, I kind of have gotten a sense of the community.
So I actually live out in Loudoun County. Spent most of my life in Reston. My parents moved to Reston when I was a baby. So, and like I said, I taught elementary school for the first 2 years out of college and at Hyba Valley. So a lovely commute from Hyba Valley to Reston. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but.
Yeah, I'm not a county resident either. I'm in Fairfax City, but I'm very familiar with the area down there just because of the library branches. So I've done a lot of work with like Lorton Library, which I know there's all the construction going on there, but yeah, familiar in a professional sense, but no, I don't live down there.
Yes, and I live in Reston, and we have a branch in on Route 1, but our headquarters is actually in Fairfax Corner, out off 66. So that's where I actually am based.
So, what are your all's perspective of Richmond Highway? And let me ask this: are you looking at the corridor or the entire Mount Vernon district?
We are looking at the entire district,
okay.
Not just the Route 1 corridor. So any issues that impact the district as a whole is what we're
Yeah. So our two areas of focus, Christine, are Mount Vernon District and Drainesville. And we know obviously those two districts look very different as well. So we're planning to have some conversations with folks who work and live in those areas too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Because that helps give us a little bit of context as we're thinking about this. So I would say, based on your experiences in visiting the corridor and working through different services, we have enormous diversity in the Mount Vernon district, from an ethnic and economic diversity, where you will see certainly the range of the neediest individuals in Fairfax County to some of the wealthiest individuals in Fairfax County. Regionally, from that perspective, we also are, we have the most water line, the most coastline. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, if you look at the environment and those sort of things, we also have, we feel for sure, the most diversity in all aspects of the county. And, I would say, from having worked for two supervisors right now, that's what makes it so unique. And that's something I think that we all try to celebrate and make sure that when decisions are being made, that all of that is being taken into account, which isn't always very easy. Mm-hmm. So I know Diego, Nick, and Abdul, they had some great conversations about this morning. So I'll let you all dive into that a little bit more while I eat my sandwich.
Go for it. Diego, maybe being I guess you're the newest person on the team. Any, unique perspectives that you have come across, or unique strengths and opportunities that you see in this community?
Yeah, I think I have a very unique perspective. I grew up along the corridor as part of an undocumented family. So, there's a lot of little networks between the different immigrant communities that exist along the corridor, right? Not necessarily only within the immigrant Latinx community, but the immigrant, African community, the immigrant Middle Eastern community. So there was always sort of these little networks that would help one another. And sort of growing up, I realized that there's this, large sort of untapped workforce because you have people with varying immigration statuses, and sometimes that doesn't let them work in, what their profession might have been in their home country, or, they can't work legally, so they do other forms of work, right? Other work, and my experience has specifically been in construction and handyman work. But I would say that's sort of like a big opportunity there, that large untapped workforce, as well as a strength. I think that our vibrant immigrant community and that diversity really promotes, entrepreneurship, small businesses along the corridor, and at the same time, it really promotes our arts, right? I think that culture and diversity and arts are sort of like intrinsically linked. So we have, especially I would say in high school, children that are very much interested in the arts.
That's great. And I did see, I don't know much about it, but the Workhouse Arts Center is obviously an important feature within the arts community. So we probably might look into more understanding of that organization, what they do.
Sally Ann, you should also look into the original Mount Vernon High School, which used to be the Saudi Academy. The county's getting ready to invest significantly into that facility. It really serves kind of as the fulcrum in the district. And, we're hoping, Supervisor Storck calls it a human development center. And I know I kind of think of it as a future hub for community members, where, maybe you can come in and take some classes from Nova. You can work in the innovation kitchen and learn new skills. It'll be along one of the main BRT bus routes in the district as well. But if you're on the county website and you pull up original Mount Vernon High School, you can find out more about that. And based on your topic, I would imagine that you're going to probably be talking to Carla Bruce or somebody in Carla's group. They've been very involved, with what we're doing. So I don't know, Nick, if you want to talk a little bit about Gum Springs and the Quander family and, some of the things that we're doing in Gum Springs.
Sure, once this fire truck calms down. So Gum Springs is the oldest African-American community in the country. It was founded, I believe, in 1833 by Wes Ford, who's a former slave of George Washington. And it was one of the first, I believe, freed slave communities in the country. So that's a unique piece of history that we have here in Mount Vernon district. And I'll just preface that by saying there's also multiple other historic sites in our district, and lots of heritage resources and opportunities for preservation and adaptive reuse of those sites. So you mentioned the Workhouse Arts Center, which is a great example of that, also with the original Mount Vernon High School. So I just wanted to highlight that as a strength. But yeah, Gum Springs is they have been kind of historically, I believe, underserved, I think, by the, just underserved community. It's a historically African-American community. So we can all kind of get a, glimpse into the history of that just based on histories of other African-American communities across our country during the, from when the Civil War ended to Reconstruction to Civil Rights Movement, and then to present day, a lot of those inequities still exist. So we've been working, it's been an ongoing effort to engage with Gum Springs to kind of work towards a historic district designation. It's kind of honorific at this point. And, we're trying to work with the community on this grant project we received through the Heritage Resources Division from the Department of Planning and Development, was to create a National Register nomination for the Pride of Fairfax Lodge, which is a historical landmark in the community. It is former location of the Sanders Moon Community Action Association, which was a big meeting space for a lot of civil rights groups during the 1960s and the War on Poverty era of President Lyndon Johnson. And part of this grant work is identifying other heritage sites and historic landmarks, and also documenting oral histories of the community by engaging with Gum Springs community members to eventually create a preliminary information form to submit to make Gum Springs a historic district. And part of that, Supervisor Storck allocated an additional $60,000 in third quarter carryover funding to expand that to a larger kind of management plan to set the stage for working with an advisory group of Gum Springs community members to do some long-term visioning work to identify what their priorities are when it comes to community development. So, and what I'm trying to do in collaboration with Carla Bruce and the Chief Equity Officer of Fairfax County, and also with Neighborhood and Community Services, Department of Planning and Development, and Department of Housing and Community Development, is to create a different take on how we normally engage folks when it comes to land use decision making processes. One that kind of champions equity and comes from a perspective of just things we may have tried in the past may not have worked so well. So we're trying a new approach to kind of, I think, go through some reconciliation with the historic tension between the Gum Springs community and the county, and see if we can move forward from that. So it's a exciting work to be a part of.
Great. There is a lot of history there, and I know that in LFI we have had some of our field trips, quote unquote, cut short because of the pandemic, but hopefully from everything we've learned, we'll have opportunities to visit the different places you're talking about in Mount Vernon, and the courthouse, and Fairfax has a lot of history. There's so much of that in this region. And the original Mount Vernon, I know Office for Children's been involved in those too, and I think there are plans to have that be a location where more professional learning can happen for educators, because it's tough. I mean, we offer so much of our learning when we were meeting in person in certain parts of the county, and we recognize that, to be equitable, you need to offer more in other places, because transportation is such a tough challenge for so many, and it's such a large county.
So the one other thing I would mention about the district, as far as we have so much rich heritage and culture, and that we'll get into that a little bit later. But it sets a very strong foundation for tourism and the hospitality industry. We're not a high tech corridor, but our base is human resources, and so that's we focus on that. The other piece is we have a very large military presence. Fort Belvoir is right smack dab in the middle of the Mount Vernon district. It's the largest employer in Fairfax County, which is crazy. They have over 50,000 employees, and so they just opened the National Army Museum up the street. So that was supposed to bring in 1 million visitors per year. That's obviously not happening right now. But from that perspective, we also have a very rich military history. And when you talk about South County, I brought this up to the team this morning. There was an article in 2012 about how the Lorton area is one of the most diverse areas in the country, with over 160 different languages spoken and represented. And I think if you Google that, it was a Washington Post article. You can find out some more information about that. So much going on, a lot of different wonderful, great things. And I don't know, Abdul, if there's anything else that we missed from that about diversity. Abdul gets to also work on our health and human services, so he sees a different perspective.
No, I think we touched on everything that we kind of brainstormed prior to this meeting.
How do you feel? I mean, I was reading an article from, I think, last June or April, that there are about 1,100 small businesses around that Richmond Highway corridor. And I'm just curious, how has the pandemic impacted those small businesses? Have you seen a decline? Kind of what's the next step? How do you ensure that community stays viable moving forward?
Abdul, you want to take that?
I was going to let you, Christine.
Oh, okay. So we do have a lot of small businesses. We have a lot of small businesses that are immigrant-owned businesses. And so when the county came out with the RISE program to, help small businesses, one of the things that was really, really important to Supervisor Storck was to make sure that they weren't only touched with notifications by the county. Postcards went out to all small businesses across the county, but that they were also touched by us. And so our office worked with Supervisor Lusk's office, and we sent out a postcard in English and in Spanish to let folks know this is a resource. This is money that you do not have to, you don't have to return. It's not a loan. It's for you to, pay your payroll or whatever that is. And so we work with the local chambers as well. I think one of the things that we're really fortunate with is we have a very engaged citizenry too, and they want to support local businesses. So that's also been another, support system that we've had. Mm-hmm. They want to support the local businesses. They're promoting the local businesses, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, folks were ordering extra food for workers. They wanted to make sure that the local restaurants weren't going to go under. And, I think we saw that not just here, but also countywide, regionally, and across the country. But making sure that we are connecting folks with the resources, because communication is always oh, I'd love for LFI to do something on this. You know, what are the best ways and tools to connect the kinds of information and especially with what you all do, you know, how do you connect to the folks that most need it? And make sure that, yeah, we've got these great programs, but that they know about it and that they also know how to access them and that there's support to get there. And that is a conversation we have all the time. So we worked with the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber on that. We worked with also the SFDC, the Southeast Fairfax Development Corporation, with Evan Kaufman. He had an online resource where he was highlighting businesses weekly, kind of as we went through the pandemic and things, I don't know, normalized. They pulled back a little bit on what they were doing, but they were highlighting businesses regularly and you know, maybe picking a restaurant and doing a virtual happy hour and you order food from them and that sort of thing. So those are the things that I can think of off the top of my head in what we did and trying to engage in that.
Yeah, that's great. I liked what you said about how do we best connect resources to the folks who most need it, and that's right there with the equity piece of this. And that, you know, every community has different needs and languages and, you know, ways to reach them. So it's a challenge. It's tricky.
Mm-hmm. As just if I can ask a more detailed question, I'm a communication, that's what I do internally. So is there but I don't do it for the county. So when the RISE program was stepped up, is there then one division of the company for any of the disparate departments? If they have a new program, is there one area that's responsible for that? Or is that team that came up with RISE then responsible for distributing that information? Like, how does it happen today? So what would the advantage be, or what would you see it as an improvement? Like, is there one central communications team that then takes all the programs that are approved and strategizes how to deploy that throughout the county well, or is that at the mercy of whomever has stepped up the program?
So that one specifically was through the Department of Economic Initiatives led by Rebecca Modry.
Okay.
And their number one priority at that time was to identify the businesses, communicate to those businesses and support those businesses and help them work with the company that was doing the RISE program. And so, you know, a lot of times in a large organization, in the county and other places, that it's that's more dispersed and sometimes that's not as focused, but I think they did a phenomenal job. They were laser focused on getting this done and getting it out and making it successful. And they were really just moving quickly,
Sure.
To get that done. So I don't know, if you guys have any other thoughts.
I was mostly just curious. I don't know how dissemination of information happens in the county if someone has a new program. So it was more
Christine, do you have a sense of if you're looking at the whole county and those RISE funds that went out, what percentage went to the Mount Vernon area?
Do you remember what that was?
We have that number somewhere. I think it's between like 12 and 18%.
Okay.
I know on their I think they do have a dashboard on the county website.
Okay. Yeah,
that breaks it out too, because they were focused on minority and women-owned businesses as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rebecca, to further dig into your question, we do have an Office of Public Affairs that when a program is as big as RISE was, they are side by side with the department that's running it out.
Okay.
But for smaller programs, each department has a PIO, which I don't know what it stands for.
Public Information Officer.
And that personal public something.
Yep.
And they handle their department's communications.
Okay. Great.
I would say too, if we weren't in a pandemic, Supervisor Storck identified when he became supervisor that we need to be doing more kinds of outreach to our Latinx community. And there is, relationships that have to be built, trust that has to be built, information sharing that has to occur. And if we weren't in a pandemic, Diego wouldn't be in the office very much. He would be out knocking on doors and, helping to cultivate those relationships, because it's hard to do that, in this kind of in this virtual environment. And so that's a key role that whenever we get back to some kind of normal, we'll be looking to Diego to help further that.
That's great.
I haven't heard the term Latin X before. Can you describe to me what that means, what the X means? Or
Yeah, so Latinx is just sort of a newer term that, I became known or aware of in college. And it's sort of just gender inclusive, right? Because Spanish is a masculine and feminine language. So when we take into consideration the binary, right, and people that are outside that binary, we just use the X.
okay.
So it's, of Latin origin, X, male, female, or not.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
I wanted to maybe pivot briefly on moving into the kind of the transportation piece of this. I was curious. I did just a quick little search about what's happening in this area and read a little bit about the Embark Richmond Highway Comprehensive Plan improvement for this, looking at these multimodal transportation solutions and the rapid bus transit system. I was curious kind of where is that project? I don't know if it's been continuing to move forward or if things have started already, but would love your perspectives on that piece, and how has the community kind of been engaged in that process?
Yeah, I can tackle that first. So the original comprehensive plan amendment was approved in 2018, and there was a lot of public meetings and community engagement leading up to that eventual adoption of the amendment. And there's still a lot of follow-on motions of for areas of study related to that are still going on through DPD. But we've been talking a lot with the BRT team throughout this past year. They've been doing a lot of great work, even though the pandemic has probably impacted a lot of that. There have been a few delays in the project. It's now projected to be complete by 2030. And there's just a lot of moving pieces about it. So, there's a redevelopment piece around the nodes where the BRT stations are located, known as the community business centers, and those are ideally the areas of higher urbanization, mixed-use development that will ideally bring a lot of an economic revitalization and opportunity to the corridor, which is, as desperately needed. Last year there was a lot of surveying work and various community updates. So there were surveys about 3 different aspects of the BRT project. There were surveys more recently about station design and branding. And those surveys closed the 1st of March. They were extended a bit just to allow the community to get as much participation as they can. So, there are 2 concepts of this designs for the stations that the community voted on, and then 3 branding names. So the effort to rebrand the BRT is a choice between 3 names: the One, the Rex, and the X. So the community was able to vote on those would be the name of the bus line, the eventual future bus line that will go down the middle of Richmond Highway. I know that as far as transportation, the right-of-way acquisition process is beginning this year. So that involves Fairfax County DOT, taking and acquiring certain parcels that they need to widen Richmond Highway to make room for the BRT route. And they're responsible from Huntington Metro Station down to Sherwood Hall Lane, which is right in the middle of the highway that stretches through our district. And they'll be widening that part and taking care of a lot of the redevelopment there. And then VDOT is responsible for widening from Sherwood Hall Lane to Jeff Todd Way. So that's a VDOT project. And I believe they're a bit further along than the county with that. And that's really kind of the main updates. There are a lot of other comprehensive plan amendments to kind of that passed eventually in various transportation studies that passed to just kind of facilitate larger redevelopment potential. One example is the North Gateway area, which is right above, next to the Huntington metro area, right before you hit the 495 Beltway. So that area has a lot of hotels and car dealerships, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But the comprehensive plan was amended to allow for a larger density and intensity potential, so that higher density mixed use development can occur there. And that's one of the community business center areas that won't have a BRT station. So we just wanted to have as much opportunity for redevelopment there as possible. And that was a really huge community effort. One of our main civic groups, the Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Associations, was instrumental in kind of initiating that comp plan amendment since about 10 or 12 years ago. They started, as they would say, bugging us about amending the comp plan. So yeah, it's that's kind of the current status, I would say.
Is it a percentage of the mixed use housing that's going to be developed? Is that earmarked? I mean, is it zoned for affordable housing? I know often when development projects can happen, it can tend to drive out the lower wage earner because they can't afford the slick new housing. So is a portion of it already zoned for affordable?
Yeah.
Or is that part of what you said you have room to grow on the challenge for when land is
well,
deemed use?
Yeah, it's definitely, affordable housing is definitely, another challenge countywide, and especially apparent here in the, in Mount Vernon district, also in Lee district, mainly along the Richmond Highway corridor. So currently, with any multifamily kind of apartment development housing, there's a requirement if you build over 50 multifamily units, I think this is correct, you need to commit countywide to a minimum, and this was actually the previous policy, commit to a minimum of 12% of those units need to be either affordable or workforce units. So affordable at a certain level of area median income. That policy, that's a policy that's written in the policy element of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
That policy was recently amended, I believe in last month or the month before, around the workforce dwelling units. So that policy the percentage amount was reduced to 8%, but while that may seem like a decrease, the percentages of AMI that had to include involved, it was previously 80% to 120% AMI, which is really, you're not really getting
100 to 120.
Yeah. You're not really getting a lot of quote unquote affordable gain. So, but the policy was amended, while it's only an 8% commitment, it's now from 60% to 80% AMI. So you're allocating more affordable units for folks. So that's one step towards reassuring that affordable housing opportunities are, abundant in the county. And, we have other developments in these kind of areas that are planned for more transit dense, areas, transit oriented development is what it's called. We have the North Hill project, which is a 40+ year project in the making. It's right at the corner of Lockheed Boulevard and Richmond Highway. It was a bunch of forests. There was a mobile home park at one point, but now it's just a big construction site. The groundbreaking for that happened last year. So that was really great during COVID to have that happen. They're building 279 affordable units. I believe about 60 or 62 of those are for senior affordable units for senior housing. And then they're also building 175 market rate townhomes. Then you have also the Arden project off of Huntington Avenue, which is right near the Huntington Metro. That's going to be completely affordable units. I believe it's about 120 some odd units, all at a mix of incomes from 30% to 70% AMI. So it's all affordable. And yeah, we work very closely with housing and community development to identify other opportunities for preserving affordable housing. Recently, there was the Affordable Housing Preservation Task Force that was formed, and they just finalized their recommendations and should be presenting that to the board housing committee in April, I think is what's going to happen. I know that was a lot of information, but short, succinct way of saying it is, affordable housing still remains an issue, but I think we're moving in the right direction. At least our district is moving in the right direction, and trying to identify preservation opportunities. It's not an easy, easy challenge. It's a challenge to kind of create buy-in, given the kind of, I think, you have a kind of a disparity of wealth in our district, but when you move towards Richmond Highway and then move away from it. So it's sometimes a challenge to explain the need for affordable housing, but we do the best we can. So
that civic organization that you referenced, does that tend to be from the more of the haves and not the have-nots, or is it a mix of the whole district's makeup?
The citizens group?
We have actually 2 civic umbrella organizations in Mount Vernon district. The Mount Vernon Council covers the area north of Fort Belvoir, and then we have and they've been in place almost, I want to say, is it 50 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the South County Federation, which handles, land use south of Fort Belvoir, and they've been in place for over 30 years. And, over that 80-year span of time, the membership changes and flips. And so, and they're totally both volunteer-based organizations. So, we work very closely with them, but they're their own
entities,
autonomous groups. And I don't know, Sally Ann, how much you all know about, the Richmond Highway corridor, but it was built in the 1950s, kind of as like a Route 66. And so you have hotels and motels and gas stations that were built up along the roadway. And then suddenly 95 and the Beltway were built. And, we're still, we still have a lot of the remnants of that. And what do you do with that? And that's what Embark and BRT are supposed to do, is to help bring us into the 21st century. And Supervisor Storck is very sensitive to the fact that while we're working towards bringing everything into the 21st century, we also don't want to leave anybody behind. And that it's important, especially as we just look right across the Beltway over at the city of Alexandria, gentrification was a big issue throughout their redevelopment, and we can certainly do a better job. I think Fairfax County and our planners have that in mind all the time. And we're fortunate that we can have projects like North Hill, which was a 40-year in the making project with hundreds of community meetings. To finally be able to get a shovel in the ground last year, that was huge.
Congrats.
Yeah.
And you're right. You drive down and you see these, it's kind of cool to see these old motel style places for people to stay. But, I always wonder, do they have business? Who's staying there? And if people are coming into town, they're probably staying with someone they know, or going to the Marriott or something, that's still I don't know. It's got to be a huge challenge, and this isn't the only community kind of facing that. You see it even, I think I went to a winery once out towards, somewhere out a ways, and same thing. You see those little motels here and there. And so, it's a challenge. And I think your conversation, talking about these affordable housing units all ties to the need. Well, if people are going to live there, what's the job outlook look like? And are there businesses that they can work in the service industry and things like that? And I know the EDA is really trying to do, create ways to encourage businesses to come to the county. But, there definitely is that new thinking of it can't just be Tyson's or McLean. It has to be, across the entire region. So I'm sure there's a lot going on working in partnership with them as well.
They just recently, Victor Hoskins, when he came on as the executive director, one of the first things he did is Supervisor Storck took him on a tour of the South County area. He was not familiar with in the southern part of the district, and then in the Lorton communities, we have kind of a renewal. You have 2,000 acres of prison land that was turned over to the county in the early 2000s. And so you have new development mostly in that part of the district. That's a lot of that new development has certainly slowed down since then. In the northern part of the district, you have a lot of revitalization and infill. So kind of two very different types of development and resurgence going on. And so when Mr. Hoskins came on board, we took him on a tour of the Lorton area at the Workhouse Arts Center, at the adaptive reuse site of the Lorton Prison, at Occoquan Regional Park, and the changes that had happened, the complete metamorphosis of the park there, which is where the Turning Point Suffragist Memorial is, celebrating our women suffragists who were actually imprisoned in Lorton when they were picketing for the right to vote. And he loved it, absolutely loved it. He's met with the Mount Vernon Council as well. We've had a great partnership with them, and they've had a really big interest in how do we continue to promote, accelerate, and support the revitalization along the corridor. And they just finished a Richmond Highway study. So we're happy to share that with you all, and take a look at the information and the data that they have in there. They did a lot of interviews with folks, and it was good. It kind of reinforced a lot of what we already knew, but if you're looking at from an economic development perspective, if you look at Embark and BRT, if you look at what we're trying to do with the EDA, if you look at how much it costs per square foot for space down here, we're hearing from different developers that it's a good buy, to come down here, because the square footage costs are certainly less than in a lot of other parts of the county.
Well, and I think now businesses are reevaluating how much space do I really need. If probably we might do some people telework and some come in 2 days a week. It's going to look a little different, I think. I know we're running close to the hour, but I guess I want to make sure, Alicia and Cheryl, if you have any questions. The only other kind of big item I would love to get some perspectives on is the whole area of safety, because obviously people are, livable community really requires people to feel safe in their home and safe in their neighborhood and safe walking to the stores. And obviously that's a huge topic in our country right now about policing and things like that. And one of our members of our team is second in command at the Reston Police Department police station. So we're getting kind of his perspectives there, but would love to hear challenges or initiatives that are happening kind of around the public safety piece.
So we're actually located in the police station. We're co-located with them, so we have a very close relationship. The Mount Vernon district, I don't know how the other districts are set up, but is actually policed by 3 different stations. So we have the Mount Vernon station. Franconia covers the southern part of Richmond Highway into Mason Neck and then up to the Woodbridge line. And then we also have the West Springfield station, which is off of Rolling Road, that covers Silverbrook Road up to 123 and down 123 on the Occoquan side. And over the past several years, I think you've probably heard countywide, we are very fortunate. We have an amazing police, and we are the safest jurisdiction of our size. So we're very fortunate from that perspective. In looking at, countywide and our population growth, the county identified many years ago that we needed to add another station. And so they've already broke ground in South County, in Lorton. There will be a co-located South County Police Station and animal shelter off of Lorton Road. I think it's on a 13-acre site. And, that will help kind of redistribute across the county police resources. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. It's premature, but you know, from Mount Vernon District, we know that we have a very active station. I believe, I don't know Abdul or Nick or Diego, I can't remember if we have the most police officers, if not one of the highest number of police officers. But they are very, very innovative in how they get out in the community, and community policing is very important to them, where, you know, they've got relationships with different community groups. Now that the weather's nice, they've got their bike teams, you know, that go out and interact with the communities in different ways. We've got our community resource officer, Marvin Goodley, and his responsibility is, you know, to build relationships with community leaders and you know, promoting community health and safety. So I don't know if you were looking for something specific.
Not necessarily. I mean, you know, I think the police as a whole are kind of looking at how are they perceived in the community, because that's a huge, you know, we hear about it in the news, we hear all the stories that are out there, and I think that's great that you're doing more to get involved. The police are doing more to get involved and show that their presence is important, but they're not there to just kind of identify all the bad things happening. They want to be a part of the solution if there are challenges.
Yeah, and I think that in regards to FCPD, sort of the last year they made a reform with their immigration policy, or the county as a whole. It was General Order 604, in which now, you know, police officers are unable to ask status, right? So it's sort of that renewed commitment to our immigrant communities. And then, you know, the renewed commitment just recently, about a month ago, or maybe it was a couple of weeks, with our trust policy, the county's trust policy, which once again reinvigorates the commitment to our immigrant communities, in which the county, you know, is no longer taking that personal information, or in the event that information is taken, it is held, and it is confidential, and it's not shared between, you know, federal agencies, which are looking to, you know, maybe harm some of our immigrant communities. So that trust building, right, is starting. It's starting, and it's there, and it's a matter of getting that information out. And our police, you know, are often on the front lines of that mistrust, right? But hopefully these policies, right, will help mitigate some of that trust and help overcome some of that fear that currently exists in our immigrant communities.
That's great. Alicia and Cheryl, any questions you have, or anything you've left out?
I don't have any specific questions. I've actually been trying to take notes because I know I'm going to forget a lot of things you guys said. You know, just kind of circling back to our topic of establishing a livable community that's equitable. It sounds like you guys are definitely in the planning and developing of certain cornerstones of those. You know, you talked about the transportation part of it. You know, I think that it's going to give us a lot of information to use on our presentation as far as examples of what's going on and what's being done. So appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. The one thing that you asked, I'm just trying to get these in here while I'm thinking of it. There's the Lorton article. There's a little bit about the North Hill development. You asked about challenges rising to the top for a livable community, and this is something we're always thinking about. And we always talk about access to services and access to opportunities. When you're this far away and you have to take 4 buses to get somewhere, that's not access. And so we're always looking at how do we improve that. Embark is absolutely one way, through the county and state and federal, you know, resources. You know, we're looking at a $1 billion investment, you know, from the county up and down the corridor, to help with that. And we know that that will continue to help attract and bring other kind of development and things that we want to help support the community. And I know this is something that Nick and Abdul and Diego have spent a lot of time talking to Supervisor Storck about, is economic mobility and home ownership. You know, how do we help create and support that path for people and educate them on the possibilities that there are? Mm-hmm. And, you know, by providing affordable housing in the area, we have an opportunity to do that. I don't know if any of the three of you want to elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I mean, the housing market right now, as we know, is just, things are going like hotcakes, and it is a challenge. I mean, I've heard from some realtors that parts of the county that once were more affordable for maybe a young couple, they're priced out now because anyone wants to, you know, people want to get out of the city, they want to have land, and Fairfax or Loudoun are the closest, if you still do have a job in DC, as an example, to have that opportunity. But definitely not easy.
Well, and I know the EDA is looking into that. How do we have a lot of smart kids that, you know, grow up in Fairfax County. Yep. They can't afford to come back and live here. Mm-hmm. And so where are they going? And how do we prevent that brain drain? And how do we promote, you know, bringing them back in? And that's something that the EDA is looking very, very closely at.
That's something, actually, I believe Victor came and spoke to our board a year or so ago, and that's one of the things they're talking about in the, you know, the technology corridor where we are, is not just how do they afford to live here, but how do we make them want to live here? You know, mm-hmm. offering the arts or the whatever entertainment things to make them feel like this is where they want to be, rather than, you know, going out to the West Coast or somewhere. So I think all of those, you know, back to feeding into our what's a livable community. We need a livable community that people want to live in. So attracting, you know, those people and attracting businesses that are going to be able to then attract employees to work at their businesses. So it's all, you know, interconnected. So lots of work to be done, but lots of potential too, you know.
Just as in closing, could you, and this wasn't a provided question in advance, so sorry for being on the spot if that's how you feel. But what do you think, from your perspective, is your top 1 or 2 features of your district that make it a livable community to you, since it sounds like most of you live there?
I guess I'll start. I like a lot of the parks that are available, you know, especially in the pandemic. There's great places to walk and cool places to explore. And honestly, like, you know, I lived in the area, the DMV area, since 2016. Lived in Arlington for about 4 of those years, and haven't really seen this. You know, I have worked for Fairfax County, but lived in Arlington when I did up until now, and it's cool to explore this part of the county. Lorton's great, also. You know, all the stuff down there to do and see, and all the historic sites, and yeah, I think, you know, just the number of local businesses that you can support, and the kind of local restaurants and cafes. Bread and Water in the Bellevue Shopping Center, if you're ever down here, is really delicious. And yeah, it's great being along the GW Parkway as well. You know, walking along there. I just think there's a lot of natural beauty to take in. So
that's one of my favorite places, the Mount Vernon Parkway, or the trail there.
Yeah.
And, you know, our LFI team has not met in person, so maybe we'll all meet at the Bellevue Shopping Center.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, you should do that. I would absolutely ditto what Nick said. I live in Lorton, and the Cross County Trail is connected right there. I can hop on my bike. Another place that you all should go if you haven't been is Occoquan Regional Park.
Yes. I've been there. That's lovely.
It's amazing. They've got a local little restaurant that you can eat at that's right on the water. And then you have the entire Mason Neck community, which is really untapped. You can go horseback riding, you can go kayaking, you can go stand-up paddleboarding. The amount of natural resources that we have is certainly a huge attraction for a lot of people.
Awesome.
Yeah. Diego, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody touched on a little bit, but I'm also going to say, transportation. I know that we're looking to revitalize our transportation system.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, man. We've been getting a bunch of phone calls today.
But it was, transportation, especially with the Rex line, was, well, for me growing up, very reliable, and it's sort of what allowed me to work through high school, going into college, working in Alexandria, coming back home on the Rex, having sort of that point of connection, being able to see what's over there, being able to see what's back here, right? And always gravitating towards sort of the natural beauty that Mount Vernon had. That, and then, Fort Belvoir too. Base is really nearby, and during high school there was a lot of friends that I had that were along base or that lived in base, and sort of the opportunities that lied there as well. And I think that, right now we're moving towards a direction that we want to have a better relationship with Fort Belvoir. We want to have more, more opportunities to speak with one another, to communicate with one another, but to really, not live with one another, but like, we want to deepen our relationship with Fort Belvoir. And I think that in the past I've had that relationship, so moving forward it's going to look very different.
Awesome. Abdul, any thoughts for you? Final thoughts?
Well, Nick stole my community because I do live in Bellevue and a block off of the GW Parkway, so the location of it is just absolutely gorgeous. But the one thing that I would add is just the amount of market rate affordable housing that we do have here, not just dedicated affordable. And a lot of the things that we touched on today was about redevelopment and revitalization along the corridor in different pockets of our community. We have to make sure whatever market rate affordable that we have now, we're finding some sort of replacement for that, because with redevelopment and revitalization, market rate affordable goes away. And there's no protection of that right now. So we have to be extra careful and intentional in all of our actions that we're making going forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. It's great
you're welcome.
to hear your perspectives, and both from your professional work and personal, since you all live in the area. So you've given us a lot of food for thought and some great other organizations and ideas that we can look into further. So if we have any additional questions, we may circle back with you. But really appreciate your time and all the great work that you guys are doing in the community.
Thank you. And if you think of anything that we, if you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to help with that. And I'm going to also just put in here the link to the EDA market study. So you guys can have all the reading materials you could possibly ever need.
Thank you.
We'll give our teammates some homework.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't here.
Awesome. So thanks again, all of you, and look forward to hopefully one day we'll see you all in person soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Nice meeting you.